皆さん、こんにちは。私は Tian,
私はジェイクです。
and this is our presentation on tea or ocha. Okay, so tea is believed to have come to Japan when a monk brought tea from China to Japan during the Heian period. But the culture surrounding tea is believed to have truly started in the 1100s when tea trees were planted in Kyushu and Hakata. Monks would originally use the tea for medicinal purposes. Then intellectuals, statesmen, samurai, and then the general populace would adopt it into their daily routines. So most tea around the world is made by heating tea leaves on the heated surface, and this is to prevent oxidization. However, in Japan, the majority of tea is green tea, and this is made by steaming the tea rather than heating it. And the duration of how long the tea is steamed changes the taste, and there's four main levels, which are asamushi, which is a shallow steam, chumushi, which is a medium steam, futsumushi, which is a normal steam, and fukamushi, which is a deep steam. So tea is produced in nine main steps, and these are the first step is plucking, starting April, which is like kind of when tea leaves are ready to be picked. They are picked and then taken to a factory. Then steaming, which is when the tea leaves are steamed in order to stop the leaves from fermenting. Refrigerating, where the leaves are cooled and that removes like some of the water. Beating, where they physically beat the leaves in order to vaporize water. Rough rolling, which is when the tea leaves are pressed with pressure and then dried with hot air. Crumbling, which is when they kind of break the tea leaves apart to ensure that like moisture is evenly distributed between the leaves. Middle rolling, kind of similar to rough rolling, the tea leaves are pressed with pressure again and then dried again. Fine rolling, which is kind of the same thing. They press and dry it again, but this time they also kind of shape it correctly. And then drying and mixing, where the leaves are dried and then leaves from different teas are mixed together, and that creates the flavor of the tea. So in Japan, tea is not just a beverage, but there's also like a ceremony surrounding it, and it's called the chanoyu. So chanoyu involves the host serving the guest tea, and there's rules and steps for both parties during the ceremony. Chanoyu literally translates to the way of the tea, and it encompasses all aspects of how to make, serve, and drink tea, as well as other important rituals. So the full ceremony can take several hours, but they're often abbreviated to about an hour or 45 minutes. And the ceremony takes place in a special room designated specifically for tea drinking, known as the chashitsu, which literally translates to tea room. Not all the rooms are the same, but a lot of them follow the same rules or the same elements to create a proper chashitsu.
The tea rooms are very often their own structures, separate from the rest of the home, and they're built in the center of the garden known as a roji. You might have heard them referred to just Japanese tea gardens here in the U.S. Um, these gardens are walked through on the way to the ceremony, and they're designed to promote just peaceful contemplation, calmness, lots of very showy flowers, very colorful things, or flowers like strong smells, they tend to be avoided. And instead, they have just more modest parts of nature, stuff like stone pathways, mosses, ferns, bushes, small trees, stuff like that. Here's some examples of roji. You can see the stone pathways leading up to these buildings that are these are the chashitsus, and we can see small bushes, nothing super extravagant, but just simple, peaceful gardens. There are many different schools of thought on how exactly a Chanayu should go, but there's a rough outline to all the different ways of thought that we're going to go over here. The ceremony starts with the host letting their guests know that they're ready to serve them. The guests who will have been waiting in the roji will then enter the chashitsu. Before they enter, they must wash their hands in a stone basin, and this is to just ritualistically purify themselves from like the outside world. And very often the entrance from the Roji into the Chashitsu is too low to be able to walk through, so you have to bow down to enter, and this just symbolizes humility and respect for the ceremony and the host. Upon entering, the guest will sit in Saiza. This is called our formal position, formal sitting position. This is this kneeling thing you see here. This will go on for the whole ceremony. All parties will sit like this. Talking isn't like entirely banned during the ceremony. There's some parts that have talking as part of the ceremony, but for the most part, the host is going to make the tea and the guests won't talk, and it's because it's a very meditative activity, drinking the tea and watching the tea be made. So no talking for most of it. The tools used for making the tea are first taken out. They're cleaned in front of the guests, and sometimes a meal is eaten before the tea is prepared, which consists of several small courses. This doesn't always happen, but in some schools of the Chenryu this happens. The host will prepare the tea in front of the guests. There's all sorts of specific movements you have to do while making the tea that we're not going to go into entirely, but a lot of time it's very choreographed. And once the tea is made, before drinking it, the guests will eat these treats known as wagashi. These are made out of bean paste. They're supposed to kind of show the contrast between the bitterness of the tea and the sweetness of these treats that you have before. You can see they're very beautifully made. We have flowers, stuff like that. And the tea is then offered to the guests in a cup known as a cha wan, which just means tea bowl. Cha meaning tea, wan meaning bowl. And the guests will accept it and turn it 180 degrees from the way that they had it offered to them, to not drink from the face of it. Sometimes the face is decorative, and you just want to avoid drinking from that side. They will take a few sips, clean the cup where they drank from, and offer it to the next guest until everyone is drunk. Once the tea has been finished, the guests may ask the host questions about things like where the tools were acquired from. A lot of the time these are very prized possessions that were like handmade and very beautiful, so you might be interested in like where exactly the tools used to make the tea came from, what's the story behind them, stuff like that. And the tools are cleaned by the host again and taken away. The hosts and guests will once again bow to each other before leaving, and the host will thank the guests for coming and drinking their tea. Here are discussion questions for the presentation. How is tea drunk in other parts of the world? And what does tea mean to these cultures? Do you know of any ceremonies similar to the tea ceremony or Chenryu? What type of tea do you like to drink? Do you know how it is made? How does the way you drink tea compare to the Chenryu? Thank you for listening to our presentation.